it'd be best to build up your intuition. With a better mental library of experiences to tap from, the better our ability to connect dots that others cannot. I'd rather be prepared and have no opportunities than to be unprepared and have many opportunities. Intuition is a tool we have at our disposal, yet it gets a bad rap. The metaphoric mind is a maverick, and many people believe it is a wild and unruly child, which it really is. Most of us do not tap its potential to the fullest. Einstein called the intuitive mind a sacred gift. He added that the rational mind was a faithful servant. To him, his intuition helped him with many of his great breakthroughs, yet it's paradoxical that in today's world, we worship the servant and defile the gift. That leads me to my plan for the presentation. I'll remind us what intuition is, provide a case for intuition, as well as some of the shortcomings. I'll share a great analogy in how to build intelligent Fanatic intuition through deliberate practice. I'll share an example of the dots you can connect with your deliberate intuition. The world is a heap of fragments with all of the available data that surrounds us. Through our senses, we take in the world, but there's just so much there that a lot of it doesn't pass through our conscious mind. All of those fragments are out there, but how do we put those into one cohesive whole? With technological advances, there's been an exponential increase in the information available. Now we live in a sea of information and are starving for wisdom to piece it all together. Most of human existence has been overwhelmingly linear. Humans are accustomed to encountering situations that reflect simple cause and effect relationships. People expect if X happens, then Y definitely will happen. It's familiar and it's comfortable. Ray Kurzweil believes our intuition about the future is linear because that's the way the world has worked in the past. The only exclusions to linear cause and effect being viruses and bacteria within our body. Otherwise, there are few things in ordinary life that are non-linear. Compound interest is one, as well as the human brain. Roughly 98% doesn't have any logic, or belief, or strategy. Those are the things created by the 98% relational mind, but it doesn't use them. It is the other 2%, otherwise known as the linear portion, that utilizes what the 98% creates. And really, that 2% is a bottleneck. Most of us are utilizing that 2% or 2 tablespoons worth of brain matter with our most pressing problems. The rest of our decisions, say 1,000 or more each day, slip past our conscious mind. The huge amount of daily thought power is not being fully utilized to aid our conscious mind. Such focus on linear thinking has produced a modern society of individuals with a focus so narrow that any time they step 1 foot outside their pinheaded sized circle of competence, they're totally useless. Taleb gave a great example when he debated an economist in this quote. There's a massive difference between the processing power of the conscious and the unconscious mind, and it is in line with my percentages stated earlier. There's numerous research studies with varying numbers between them, but the conservative consensus is roughly 10 million data points are utilized in any given situation for the unconscious mind, and 40 to 150 data points are utilized in any given situation for the conscious mind. So, that gives a greater perspective of how much brain power is not being fully utilized. Intuition is that whole brain flow, utilizing the fullest capacity of that relational mind. It is tapping into all observations and experiences of a lifetime that allows us to think creatively about the world or take a series of relatively disparate thoughts and put them into some kind of integrated whole. This is where great ideas and great decisions come from. Look back at some of the history of great ideas, and they've come from intuition. Jonas Salk utilized intuition to develop the vaccine for polio. He thought that intuition was one of the greatest assets in that development. Thomas Edison utilized intuition to help develop thousands of new inventions, including the most important developments, such as the light bulb and telephone. Nikola Tesla utilized his intuition to help design modern alternating current and other revolutionary inventions. And Henry Ford hammered out many of his great ideas, like assembly line manufacturing, usually on long walks in the woods. For Ford, between lonely thinking and intuition, he seized ideas that startled men with its novel glint of truth. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky called intuition System 1, and they gave the slow, analytical mind the name System 2. They proposed that not all fields benefit from experts with deep intuition, and that the ones that do depend on two things: whether the domain is inherently predictable, and whether the expert has had sufficient experience to learn the regularity. One area that we've mentioned, and it's not a surprise to most, where intuition is worthless with predictions is in the stock market over the short term. It's inherently unpredictable. On the other hand, surgeons with vast experience and specialization can have great amounts of intuition. That being said, Kahneman stated that over the long term, doctors are quite poor at predicting outcomes 5 to 10 years out. But with intuition and its significant power, there are some obstacles. There are many shortcuts available that the intuitive mind possesses. They are like software bugs that can trip you up. Many people are beginning to understand the power of biases to creep up on our subconscious mind that we are not even aware of. Although those who lack experience or are operating in an inherently unpredictable environment let the mind take all of these shortcuts. Though, just think, these biases have stayed with us for generations. They have served an important purpose in our survival. They also serve an important purpose in holding investments. Sanjay Bakshi wrote an insightful comment on those trying to be hyper-rational. Doing so is rather ridiculous, as you need a few of these biases to get the full benefit of success. These two circles can often be found in highly successful individuals, especially in a capitalistic society. First is the confidence and optimism bias. Even Kahneman stated that only a few fortunate people are more optimistic than the rest of us. He said, if you are allowed one wish to give to your child, you should seriously consider the gift of optimism. Why? Those who are optimistic and confident are resilient in adapting to failures and hardships. These optimistic individuals play a disproportionate role in shaping our lives. Their decisions make a difference. They are the inventors, the entrepreneurs, politicians, you name it. They are not your average person. They are talented and have been lucky, certainly luckier than they acknowledge. And then you have the endowment effect. Owning something is perceived as being more valuable when you own it. The endowment effect can sucker you into holding a poor business when it should be disposed of quickly, but without the endowment effect, many successful buy and hold investors wouldn't have held the quality businesses as long. Thus, for certain individuals, the endowment effect and some others are extremely beneficial in achieving what they want. And in certain situations, checklists can be helpful, but often focusing too much on your linear mind and too much on avoiding risks leads to analysis paralysis. Keep it simple. Find a balance between the intuitive mind and the rational linear mind. How about harnessing intuition to help investment decisions and searching for intelligent fanatics with the potential to build shareholder wealth at rates well beyond the opportunity cost of the market? As Charlie Munger said, the game of investing is one of making better predictions about the future than other people. We need unique insights that others do not have. I like to think of business as a vast, unexplored ocean. It's somewhat predictable. The sun rises and sets in the same way, but there are unknowns. Where are you going? Where are you going to be going? What are the challenges you might face with weather, etc.? Still, business can't be all done intuitively. There's one aspect that we believe is rather predictable, and that is the human component. Who is running the ship? Can you trust them to navigate the obstacles and dangers? Do they set themselves up for and take advantage of those opportunities? Humans often are predictable to a degree, even though they're highly complex. Behaviors and habits are quite consistent and hard to break. Then, you have a group of people and often have a cultural way of doing things that are consistently better. A great example of a group and culture doing things better would be the ancient Polynesian navigators. Island culture was heavily based around navigation for survival. Islands were tiny and overpopulation was a serious threat to survival and necessitated movement from one island to the next. And when you're thinking about the Pacific Ocean, the next island could be 1,000+ miles away. That led to an art of navigation that has been passed on verbally from one to another for countless generations. And this happened centuries before continental Europeans circumnavigated the globe. The Polynesians were able to navigate nearly all of the Pacific Ocean without tools such as compasses, maps, or sextants. And they did it in canoes. Over time, the ancient Polynesians compounded a vast base of wisdom. Each navigator would spend countless hours talking, thinking, and navigating. This culminated into a great intuition for sea travel. The path of stars and rhythms of the ocean guided them by night, and the color of the sky and sun, as well as the direction which waves swelled, guided them by day. Several days from island, they were able to determine the exact day of landfall from many different sensory inputs. I remember a friend of mine telling me this story. She taught English in one of those Polynesian islands, more specifically the Marshall Islands. And one of her young students, probably 8 years old, presented her with one of these contraptions pictured here. My friend thought it was a cute little gesture, getting a craft project from the student. However, she had no idea what it actually meant. The young student went on to describe it was a stick chart that showed the wave patterns and swells around their island. Polynesians used these charts to teach the swells how to spot them and navigate through and around them. In 1768, Captain Cook sailed from Tahiti with a Tahitian named Tupaya. He guided Cook 300 miles to the south to a small Polynesian island, proving that he could navigate from his homeland to a distant island without any problem. Cook was amazed to find that Tupaya could always point in the exact direction of where his home was without any use of instruments. He took all the data from the sea and sky, and he utilized his overdeveloped sense of intuition of the sea and navigation to point him where home was. On the other hand, continental Europeans saw the ocean as a menacing world that only the bravest explorers ventured upon for long periods. One of Magellan's chroniclers described a sea so vast that the human mind could scarcely grasp it. Yet, the highly unsophisticated ancient Polynesian navigators were able to grasp the vast Pacific Ocean. Europeans did not have the same type of knowledge or culture that revolved heavily around navigation for survival. It was only utilized for conquest when the technology allowed. Intuition has been found in other places as well. Steve Jobs took a trip in his younger years to India and observed countrymen utilizing their intuition much like the ancient Polynesians had. Jobs credited his intuitive mind and that experience in India has a significant impact on his overall work ethic, understanding, and business success. If our intuitive minds are laying dormant in business and investing, how can we develop them? How can we deliberately practice finding intelligent fanatics? Chip Maloney recently wrote a great article on the Microcap Club website on deliberate practice with investing. I will highlight some keys and describe ways to work on deliberate practice in finding intelligent fanatics and their successful business models. Look at any sport or skill. Behind all the current ability lies many years of practice. Deliberate practice builds the software and hardware necessary in the brain to make faster and better decisions. Here's another great example. We'll watch a short clip with two jazz musicians, Oscar Peterson and Joe Pass, as they solo through the tune Just Friends. Keep in mind that this is an extremely fast song. Chord changes are happening very frequently, and each of these musicians has to think instantaneously how to change between all of them. There's no way their System 2 or rational mind could move or think this fast. So if you notice, everything just happened. The music flowed out of them, and that was only made possible through hours of practice with chord changes, scales, arpeggios, and many other different musical tools. The same thing is true with chess players and was pointed out in the book Peak by Anders Ericsson, and specifically this quote with co-author Robert Poole. Instead of actually playing chess, it's more important to leverage the experience of masters. Chip mentioned that learning moves from grandmasters of investing would be a worthwhile endeavor for investors. Putting yourself in their shoes allows you to reverse engineer the guru's thought process. This was a tactic Eddie Lampert used to study Buffett and gather his own investing abilities. While this is a great exercise, I believe it's limited. Another avenue would be to study successful venture capitalists. This is important for those investing in tiny companies and trying to find fanatics early. One thing that venture capitalists stress is the human component, which is mentioned earlier as one of the areas which is more predictable in the business world. In their due diligence, they see thousands of examples and have invested in many successful founders and leaders. In Ron Conway's case, he's a successful angel investor. SV Angel has looked at over 21,000 companies and invested in only 750 over the last couple of decades. That type of database has given him the feel for what it takes to be a successful founder or leader. Other VCs and private equity investors have the same type of experience as well. Brent Beshore and his team at Adventure.es also mentioned in their 2016 year-end review that they reviewed 2,500 plus opportunities, deep dived in 330, and did significant due diligence on 15 opportunities. There were 7 site visits. While 2 were close to being closed in 2016, Brent mentioned that getting a peek behind the curtain of that many companies is valuable. I agree. Venture capital and private equity firms have huge databases of how to build a large company and the type of culture necessary to do that, or even just have a successful, enduring business. Not all of us have that vast direct experience to pull from. Before we get into building our library, we can also look at Buffett. Bill Gates has mentioned his ability to size up people and businesses is pretty magical. And it's a skill that he acquired quite early. Gates said only if we could have 20% of his capacity in sizing up people. Buffett's skill in sizing up people can stem from his capacity to leverage the experience of others. Both he and Munger have built up huge databases of knowledge through reading, and Buffett recently said, I particularly love biographies to be able to live the lives of people, experience lessons, and their discouragements. They have read so much that they've built up a huge database and library to draw from. And that provides them with a better library of pattern recognition helpful in sizing up people and businesses. So, to expand our limited experience and deliberately build intuition of finding great companies and intelligent fanatics early, we need to search through the failures and successes of businesses of the past. Then we'll have a better idea of what to look for today that could lead to either failure or success. We can ask ourselves, what is the context? What did all of these organizations do right? What did they do wrong? We can study them in depth to see the common patterns among leaders and some of their decisions. From there, we draw from an almost infinite universe to study from. Doing so, you might be better prepared to spot and identify opportunities in real time, as well as keeping an eye and pulse on each company that you're watching. All of that would give you a unique insight that many other people do not have. Why do we have such a large importance on the founder or leader? Sure, it might be easier for a story to talk about one individual, but I think it's more than that. There is also a halo effect. Businesses are the embodiment of the founder and leader. Leaders, successful ones, create more leaders. In other words, they multiply themselves throughout the organization. They spread their vision, they attract high talent, and like bacteria reproduce themselves, metaphorically. Leaders have a strong army of mini fanatics setting the bar higher, and the best create a pipeline of talent to ensure that the culture remains intact for decades. When we focus a lot on the leader, we're actually talking about the whole organization as well. Let's use an example to see what dots we can connect with a vast library to draw from. You have Jeff Bezos. He's consistently set Amazon up for opportunities as the years have gone by. And now he's eating up all of the competition. Amazon is destroying practically everybody in their site. But would you have noticed some of those patterns early on? There were some indications, even back to 1997 with the shareholder letter he wrote that truly showed that he was a little different than everybody else. There are similarities with Fanatics. They will be 10% this guy, 60% that one, maybe 30% that one. They all share many common traits with one another, and there's not really one-size-fits-all description that fits every one of them. And they learn directly or indirectly by standing on the shoulder of giants of the past before them. Bezos stood on the shoulder of giants himself. He wrote his ideas on employees in 1997 and thoughts on experimenting that were very similar to the individual below many decades before. Who was this mysterious individual and their company? Walt Disney. In a Times article, Bezos said, "The thing that always amazed me about Disney was how powerful his vision was. You know exactly what he wanted to build, and he teamed up with a bunch of really smart people and built it. Everyone thought it wouldn't work, and he had to persuade the banks to lend him $400 million. He did." That sounds a lot like Jeff Bezos. Charlie Munger often talks about the capacity for Warren Buffett to learn and evolve. Had Buffett not evolved his thinking, Berkshire Hathaway wouldn't have amounted into what it is today. Now you see him investing in Apple and airlines, and shows how much they've changed from the past. Jeff Bezos and Amazon went from an online bookstore to an everything store dominating online retail, offline retail, as well as cloud computing services, and now they've gotten into intelligent personal assistants with Alexa. Jeff Bezos has shown a great ability and capacity to learn and evolve himself. Curiosity of Fanatics, and some other things that they do, you won't know beforehand. There are certain things you can look at now that gives you the trust that they will do the right thing in the future. You might not have known in 97, 98, 99, or 2000 that Bezos would reinvent Amazon as time went on. But he did talk about his goals in the 97 shareholder letter. He said, "We are still in the early stages of learning how to bring new value to our customers through internet commerce and merchandising. Our goal remains to continue to solidify and extend our brand and customer base." It was all about prioritizing their investments. Also talked about a very long-term mindset. Then, in 2001, Jeff Bezos met with Jim Sinegal at a Starbucks in Barnes & Noble in Washington. Bezos would learn Costco's model of only charging a 14% markup across the board. He also learned the membership model and that value trumps everything at Costco. Most leaders in that situation who have seen success, they would think their system is good, so let's not change it. Intelligent fanatics, on the other hand, do not think that way. They're always trying to think of ways to make their business and organization the best it can be. Jeff Bezos would immediately, after that Monday meeting with Sinegal, go back to his senior managers and announce that Amazon.com would make drastic cuts on their prices for books, videos, and music by up to 20 to 30%. He described that there were two types of businesses, ones that will try to charge as much as they can, and the ones that will try to charge as low as they can. Bezos learned to pivot to the second one. Bezos was stepping on the shoulders of Jim Sinegal, and he was stepping on the shoulders of Sol Price, who Jim Sinegal worked under at FedMart in his younger years, and got most of his great ideas from. Sol Price said that they were the fiduciary of the customer. You've got to give before you get. Buy it for a lower price, pass on the savings. Then you look at experimentation. Bezos attributed much of his experimental ways with people like Thomas Edison. Yet, if you really know and have studied many different individuals, you see similarities between this specific quote and one made by Thomas J. Watson of IBM. And if you knew that Thomas J. Watson learned everything that he did when he was working at National Cash Register, you would have known that he learned all he knew from John Patterson, another intelligent fanatic. Building up this database of knowledge, intelligent fanatic successes, and also many business failures and moderate successes throughout history allows you to connect many of the dots that most people just don't. The more you read about business successes and failures of the past, their leaders, and their internal organizations, you live those experiences. In the process, you build up a vast library of experiences to draw from. And you are not limited to your own narrow experience, so you do not have to start thousands of businesses to learn all of these lessons. You just merely have to read what everybody else did. Now, everything won't exactly repeat itself, but it will come up in various related forms. You can ask yourself, why did they do that? What are some other companies doing something similar now that's obviously different situations? Is this sounding like somebody else? Thus, when you're searching for new investments, you can connect the similarities of all aspects of that business and leader to make much better decisions. Most importantly, you'll be able to get an idea if the next company is the metaphorical continental Europeans or the ancient Polynesian navigators. When you're looking for intelligent fanatic-led organizations, then you'd want a group of individuals who are so talented they can navigate the ocean of business in canoes with barely any tools. You can trust that they will do the right thing at the right time. Our goal at the Intelligent Fanatics project is to help you build your library of experiences and build your intuition to make better decisions and hopefully find current and future intelligent fanatics.